And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for Thursday, April 6th, 2023. I'm Eric Clancy. I'm joined by Patrick Kelly. Although this will probably be on April 7th, but yeah, we've got quite a bit to talk about. We have of course, the big news over the weekend. I think it was leaked to CNBC on Saturday that Endeavor was buying WWE and merging it with UFC. So I guess we'll start there, Patrick. Vince McMahon is back in charge. The world's worst human being has re-engineered his way back to the top of WWE, and it
sporting a slightly whiplash style mustache in the process.
And dyeing his hair too.
Yeah, nobody's talking about that, but yeah, he's done that too.
He looked like Gomez Adams. It's so interesting because for years Vince had gray hair and he didn't seem to care, but now he's dyeing it all black. But yeah, he looks like a sex offender, which he is. So yeah, there's they had Ari Emanuel and him on CNBC talking about it, and holy shit, we went from in July Vince stepping down and leaving the board of directors to having a boardroom coup in December and engineering a sale and then somehow taking back over creative. Like, what a fucking whirlwind we went on there.
Here I thought Vince was getting old and he was getting dementia ridden and other things. Like, no, he's just as devious as ever. Had me fooled.
Yeah. It's some like Tony Soprano, Don Draper, Walter White level anti-hero stuff going on. But I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said by every other commentator and podcaster in the world. I think it's amazing how quickly everybody who was upset in AEW is now like, oh, you know what? Andrade is like, don't worry, I'm still with AEW. It's good. I'm happy to be with AEW, which we hadn't heard in a while.
I didn't know he was still there, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like, so this is you wonder, and Dynamite last night, I thought it was a show. It was fine. It was good. But I wonder if like this is the kind of thing that can turn momentum around, because if you remember last year at WrestleMania, momentum really shifted between the two companies. WWE put on a first really big WrestleMania in front of a big crowd since the pandemic. Cody Rhodes came in. They did a lot of things to get people talking, and they've kind of had the momentum for that time period. And after Double or Nothing 2022 and Punk's injury and the Forbidden Door build and the other injuries and the Scripe Bomb and the Brawl Out and the missteps and all those things, AEW lost a ton of momentum, and it's kind of been that way. And now you've got this situation. I'm wondering, is this one of those like start the ball rolling, you get the momentum going the other way? I don't know. And quite honestly, in Patrick and you and I's lifetime, it was basically WWE was on top, then WCW was on top for a second, and then WWE was on top forever. So we never had like back and forth shifts of momentum. It was always like WWE was on top, except for this like 2-year time period. So I don't know, but I will say this, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Dynamite, but AEW running Wembley Stadium is certainly a bold fucking move. Let's say that.
That is when Tony announced, and it had become kind of a running joke online. It's like, Tony Khan has a big announcement. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen the Dixie Carter bit, stealing her gimmick. Yeah, everything's a big announcement. Yeah, okay, sure, and it's always disappointing. But when Tony said that, I was like, wait, what? You're gonna do what? And I mean, I respect the ballsiness. I will definitely give them that. I have my doubts of whether or not they can fill Wembley Stadium, but I give them credit, and let's see what they do in August.
It's so weird because for like kind of a while, people have been saying, like if you wanted to run a stadium, apparently like All Out 2021, they could have like filled Soldier Field, apparently based on the amount of ticket demand, but they've always like kind of not gone as big as they could have. I mean, now in the US, they've hit most of the markets. So like, I mean, Forbidden Door in Toronto in June, had really good ticket sales. Double or Nothing is down this year because AEW interest is down. But, so they're kind of like up and down. Now, it's the first show in Europe for them. It's this highly anticipated London debut. They've been talking about it for a while. And, if it was just like, we're going to have a show in London, I would have been like, okay, whatever. Like, we knew they were going, it's fine. We all thought it'd be Craven Cottage. And then it was Wembley. And it's just like, that's a big fucking shot to take because, the biggest show they've ever done was the 20,000 in Arthur Ashe. So that place holds like 90. So even if they double their biggest, that's only 40, which is like less than half. So it's like it's a tall order, I think. And like, I mean, your best shot to do it is your first time in the market, but they've got to have a huge fucking show. I mean, this to me signals that Punk is coming back.
I agree. And I was thinking about this. There are two matches they should do. If they want the stadium show to feel huge, they want the stadium show to be can't miss. Everyone's got to check it out and they want to fill that stadium. There's two matches they got to do. One is CM Punk. I'm thinking versus Kenny Omega.
Yep.
Got to do that. And the other one is Sting's retirement match. I think that would be a huge match that would get people, regardless of who he's facing or if he's tagging with Darby Allin or not. Maybe it's Sting versus Darby Allin. I don't know. But I think Sting's retirement match would also be a huge attraction that people would go out of their way to see.
Yeah. So it's a great point. Dave Meltzer talked about that this morning or late last night, whatever you prefer, that Sting's retirement would be a big way to put this, to add another like level of injection into this thing. Like the Keiji Muto retirement show could be kind of a blueprint for this, but yep. I mean, they're gonna like Sting's retirement by itself isn't enough. CM Punk wrestling by himself against Kenny Omega isn't enough. They're going to need a bunch of things. So they're going to need like, I mean, they're going to need to talk to Mercedes. Yep. They're going to need like, I don't know. Do you need a Saraya Jamie Hayter match? Is that something that works? Like Goldberg, we've talked about that for a little bit, where Tony Khan was like, that's intriguing and stuff. Like Goldberg's probably a guy you maybe want on that show. Maybe Goldberg MJF. Like I don't know.
Hear me out here.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Hogan's not doing anything. Hogan Goldberg 2, Electric Boogaloo. Let's do it.
Like it maybe for like you're kidding, but for the perversity, I mean, maybe you do, yeah. but the point is, you're going to need a ton of stuff on that card, and it's because you've got kind of like two things going for it. You've got the entry into the marketplace. Sorry, three things. You've got the entry into the marketplace. You got the fact that it's in London, yes, but people from Germany can come, people from France can come, Scotland, Ireland. So you've got like essentially Europe. And then finally you've got this prestige aspect to it, which is like it's in Wembley Stadium. Like Wembley Stadium is SummerSlam 92, and it's like It's a big fucking deal for that place is a big deal. And if I'm Tony Khan, I don't care if I lose money on this show, because it doesn't really matter. Like in the grand scheme of things, if you like, the goal is to get that stadium as packed as I can, so I have that show, so you can show people like, look at, we packed Wembley Stadium. So like, if you need cheaper tickets than normal, fine. If you need to put a bunch of people on that show that maybe you couldn't afford in normal circumstances, I think that's fine. I think your goal in this situation is to create this big statement show where you have like 70, 80, I mean, it's crazy even talking about that, but like that amount of people in that building.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to, and I was only 2 years old when the show happened, but WrestleMania 3, what a big show that was. That, I've made the comment before, WrestleMania may have been born in 1985, but it came to life in 1987. That stadium show, WrestleMania 3, was what really put WrestleMania on the map and kind of shaped its identity into what we see WrestleMania is now. And a lot of the things they did at WrestleMania 3 are things we kind of take for granted at modern WrestleManias now, like the big stadium, the large crowds, and all this other stuff. We've gotten to a point in WWE where all they have to do is say, hey, we're doing WrestleMania in this town, in this venue, and people are going to show up. WrestleMania is more of a draw than any individual person, but AEW, it's a different kind of thing. There's a lot of unproven territory with that brand and them, tackling something like this. So I'm very curious to see what they do, how they do it, and ultimately what happens.
Well, remember, there's tricks though you can do to get around that because, yeah, they fill stadiums up now, but like those stadiums aren't like you can get tickets for these WrestleMania shows. Like they're not like totally sold out, obviously, and you can and like tickets aren't like as expensive as they would be in a smaller venue. Like for instance, the biggest demand has always been said was WrestleMania 17, and yeah, they got 60,000 in there, so it's not like the most people ever, but like I think those tickets were priced at a premium level, and I think like they turned away so many people from that. So like you're balancing price and you're balancing attendance figures. So like, I mean, 92 was creatively, not even creatively, financially such a down year for WWE. And they had that Hoosier Dome show, but like you could get $6 tickets for that show, but when I'm a kid and I'm watching that show, I'm like, wow, they're in this giant stadium, and it like there's a perception aspect to that. And like Wembley obviously did very well that year because I mean they had a big car, they had Bulldog was on it, but like Hogan wasn't on that show, so they were able to do that. But like there's things AEW can do to like alleviate the fact that number one, they're not at their peak in popularity, and number two, they've it doesn't necessarily you don't need to be at that level to sell this out. I mean, it's going to be a huge fucking challenge. Let me reiterate that. But let's see what they do. You really wish they had a guy like Zane Bresloff to work with them on this. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But let's move on to Mania because we kind of went from WWE getting sold to Wembley.
I will say this about WWE getting sold to Endeavor. I'm glad they got it over Saudi Arabia and Disney. Definitely over Disney. So I'm like, you know what? I can live with this.
Why don't you want Disney to have it?
Because Disney, I've seen what they've done recently, and more in recent years, more the Disney Plus era. I've seen what they've done with Marvel. I've seen what they've done with Star Wars. I'm not thrilled. I think they've sacrificed quality for quantity, where it's just shelling out more shows, more content, and just pounding it into your brain. And they just kind of ultimately, it feels like they turn everything that they get their hands on into this factory assembled kind of mush. And I didn't want them to get their hands on WWE.
You didn't want WWE, which is nothing like factory assembled mush.
Oh no,
to get turned into factory assembled mush.
It would have gotten double factory assembled mush. It would have been terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I like whatever. I think it's fine. I don't have many opinions on it really, but yeah. Hey, let's go to WrestleMania because this is a tale of a weekend. And
boy,
let's just talk about. I guess let's talk about the whole thing. Let's because
can I give my overall impressions of the show?
Yeah. Let's do that.
I was totally on board with calling this the best WrestleMania in at least 20 years. Like 19 was obviously a huge, great one that I think is very heavily celebrated. And I was like, man, this show is really, really flipping good overall. A couple missteps, but overall really flipping good. And then the finish to the main event happened. It's like, uh-oh. And then the next night on Raw happens, and it's like, uh-oh. And it was just amazing to see how quickly it turned because everybody was raving about this weekend of shows. And then it all just kind of went downhill.
So I'm not gonna disagree with you. And I agree that it was funny because people were like, oh, the first night was like one of the greatest WrestleManias ever, and then the second night they're like, it wasn't as good, but like the finish is going to be great, and then they didn't do the finish, then everybody was unhappy. I liked night one, but
Sure.
it did not wow me to the level that it wowed some other people. I thought Theory and Cena was fine. I thought the tag 4-way was like a match. I thought Rollins and Logan Paul was the best match of the night. I thought it was really great. I thought it was the best match of the night. The 6-woman tag match was a match. Ray and Dominic was good. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, I cannot disagree with most people strongly enough. I thought it was too long. I thought it was overindulgent. I thought they were doing that Gargano Adam Cole style where they like do finishers and they kick out and then they have surprise faces on. And
I was falling asleep during that match, to be perfectly honest.
Everybody loved that match. And I like Charlotte. I like Rhea. It's the same thing I say to AEW. Cut that shit down. Like, this didn't need to be 23 minutes. It didn't need to be that overindulgent.
And Charlotte sucks as a babyface. That was the big problem I had with it. Is that she's.
Well, I was watching it. And I'm like, is Charlotte the bad guy in this? Like it's just like she's terrible. Nobody buys her as that. And so I thought the second night's Bianca and Asuka was much better than Rhea Charlotte was.
And they followed a hotter match, too. I mean, that IC title match they had to follow was fire, and they went out there and had a pretty good match anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and the sentiment online was that this was like one of the best matches of the weekend, and I like couldn't disagree more.
I saw Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor. I actually liked the women's match on that show better.
Who was on that one?
It was Athena versus Yuki Sakazawa.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was a solid match. It was, and, it was like 11 minutes. It was,
which is nice. And then I'm not going to talk about Pat McAfee and The Miz. And Owens and Zayn beat the Usos in the main event. Great finish, loved it. It started off a little slow. I think everybody was drained because night one went to like midnight somehow. I'm like, couldn't you keep this show at 3 hours? And I think everybody was drained and they were out of energy, and it's a long weekend. So I think that hurt it at the beginning. It could have been a lot better, but good match, good finish.
Well, I was fully on board with this match. I loved it. I thought it was supposed to close, so
it definitely should have closed, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
And that sets you up for perhaps the fall of the Bloodline. And then, the next night, and I was kind of ready to love night two, because so they start off with Brock and Omos, which was really good. Like, this crowd was red hot for it. It's a type of match that you're not going to see in AEW because like nobody exists like Omos or Brock really anywhere else. And so I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. It did what it was supposed to do. It was a good opener. I liked it a lot.
It was as basic as it was about as basic a match as it could possibly be, but it completely worked with everything that both guys were capable of, and it had a great finish with Brock hitting the F5. I thought that worked. It's
Brock throwing around a 7'5" dude. Like, who doesn't want to see that? Like, it's, then we had another women's tag team 4-way. I'm sorry, not another women's, because the other one was men. So we had our women's tag team 4-way. It was fine. It was whatever. Then we had our Intercontinental Championship match, the 3-way between Gunther, Sheamus, and Drew McIntyre, which was very good. And somehow this crowd just got really behind Sheamus, which was interesting to see. The finish was clever. It was a really good match. Then we have Bianca and Asuka, which I thought was a really nice match. Started off a little bit slow, built up. I thought it was like, it wasn't over the top like the women's title match the other night was. So that was good. Then, of course, we had Shane McMahon come down and his knee exploded, which was hilarious, by the way.
That was awkward. That was, oh my God. That was
the best part was when Michael Cole's like, he's still good, and then he blew out his knee, so he stopped talking. And like fucking Miz just like can't improvise and like doesn't like stomp on him or anything. And then people are like, I guess, whispering in Snoop's ear and stuff, and they're like, just do this. And like, I will say they salvaged that the best they could. I mean, I think obviously Snoop was supposed to do something with Miz. I don't think he like just did something out of nowhere, but they sped it up. But I think they did the best they could with the situation of Shane just being the worst.
Yeah, and I would like to point out that Bobby Lashley didn't have a match on this show.
Mm-hmm.
It feels insulting.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor guy. He got to hold up the Andre trophy. That's all he got this year.
It is,
which felt like an apology.
Yeah, and we don't know what the deal is with Wyatt, except he had some like medical stuff, or so interesting. Yeah. There was Edge and Balor. Balor, who got like a ridiculous gash in his head.
Yeah, I didn't realize how bad it was till I saw it on Twitter. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I didn't either. This was sloppy and like, I don't know. It just, I wasn't feeling this thing.
No, I think stopping at mid-match, even though I've kind of changed my stance on it, where it's like, okay, if he's gashed open that bad, you should stop it. But that seemed to kind of throw the match out of whack.
Yeah. And then we had, of course, the main event, Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. I was ready to call this thing like the best main event in Mania history. I was ready to do that. I thought the match was really good. I thought they like it was a big match feel to it. The crowd was totally with Cody, totally against Roman. They went back and forth. They had a bunch of like callbacks, like, you know, the Usos came down and then first Solo gets ejected, then the Usos come down, and then Sammy and Kevin come down to take them out and attack Roman, and then Roman just beats Cody with help from Solo. So
who got ejected, so that spot didn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. So the issue here is, number one, the finish wasn't creative because like you said, the guy got ejected, then he just came back. So like, what's the point? And then on top of that, it's just like, why not pull the trigger on Cody Rhodes? This company, there's these promoters, Patrick, just fucking hate red hot baby faces. You could not buy a goddamn baby face in the past like 10 years, and suddenly wrestling has lucked into like 3 of them in the past like 6 months with MJF, Sami Zayn, and Cody Rhodes. And these people are like, nope, no sir, MJF is going to stay a heel because he's a bad guy. Sammy can't win the title because we're going to give it to Cody, and Cody can't win the title for some other reason. And
Roman's got to make it to 1,000 days. I'm sure that was the reason.
No. That's totally what it was. And like, I know they're doing this thing where like, oh, you know, Cody's gonna like, Cody's gonna get redemption and like whatever. I'm like, yeah, but it's never gonna be that again. Like you had a huge chance there and you blew it, and it's just such a weird. I was telling people, I'm like, it's because they want him to get to 1,000, and people would say, well, that's so stupid. Who's going to care if he was a 900 and whatever day champion, or he was 1,000-day champion? I'm like, these fucking weirdos are going to care. These guys are going to care.
And it reminds me of, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's kind of like, you know, WCW, they mishandled the Starrcade thing. 97 was Sting. He walked out with the belt, but they mishandled it, took the belt off of him. There was a confusing, you know, back and forth between him and Hogan. And then they did the rematch at Super Brawl where Sting walks out with the belt. But by that point, it felt like he'd kind of already dropped the ball, and it just didn't feel like as big of a deal.
Also, he didn't win that one clean either. Savage helped him.
Yeah, yeah, that too. So Sting felt like, it's like, yeah, Sting was always over, but he didn't feel as hot as he did in 97. And to use a heel example, Edge steals the title in 2006. Use it first Money in the Bank cash, and it's like, oh my God, this guy's the hottest heel in the world. And instead of running with him to Mania, they have him drop the title to Cena just a few weeks later, and just because Triple H has to be in that spot for some reason. And yeah, Edge would ultimately have his day. He'd get his main event runs, main event Mania, and all that other stuff, but he never felt as big or as hot.
It was never the same. And you can look at like the numbers for that too, because people are like, because if you ever want to know like why like there was like this huge gap in WWE never doing like mega business as far as like, obviously they do big business now because they have their like business to business deals, but they don't have like big viewers. I mean, I say that and they just had this huge number on Monday, but my point is they haven't had like a sustained boom period, and it's decisions like these because like Patrick said, like Edge was red hot. The numbers for him after beating Cena at New Year's Revolution in 2006 was like were very high, and like things were like trending up, and then they just had Cena beat him, and things like kind of like just stayed where they were, and they never got to that point again. And it's just like they constantly do this stuff. They shut it down, and like I was totally with them with like, okay, don't give it to Sammy. Cody's like kind of the guy that they want in that spot. That makes like long-term sense. And then they just beat Cody. And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to do like a Undertaker streak thing with Roman. So like basically every match Roman has is going to be big because you think it could be the one now. It's like bigger than any other title reign, you know? And they're like, well, if Cody wins, we lose that. And like, so that this way we can keep Cody like as a babyface fighting underneath, and Roman can do his like thing that way. So they think that this gives them more like whatever. And I'm sure Cody's going to win the title at like either SummerSlam or WrestleMania next year or something. But like, it's just I think sometimes they overthink that shit. And this was one of those things where it's just like, just have this dude beat this other dude, like you're not going to beat Bruno. So I don't, I like at the end of the day, like who cares?
Yeah, and I wonder, like, maybe it could have worked if the finish had played out better. Like, maybe they do the Brock thing at Mania to kind of shock people, or maybe debut a new member of the Bloodline, or some kind of shocking thing to kind of like, oh, Roman had another ace up his sleeve, which they didn't. Yeah. Again, that was the big problem, and added like an extra ripple to the story. But no, things are just kind of the same as they were. So I don't know. It just, the finish kind of fell flat, and like you said, one of the best Mania main events ever, especially after, you look at the 30s, especially, Daniel Bryan was great at 30. The Seth cash-in at 31 was really good, but then we went on this string of really bad Mania closers. And most of the main events and closers for the more modern WrestleManias have typically been some of the weaker parts of the show.
And Roman's been in them.
Yeah, exactly. And you get to this one, and it's like, oh my God, this thing is everything you want a main event to be. And when Cody wins, and I was at that point, it's like they got rid of Solo, they got rid of the Usos, and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to happen. And then they yanked the rug out from under us, and you just kind of feel like somebody farted in your face.
Yeah. And then of course we have the next night they do the Brock turn, which that's a big program for Cody, and I'm assuming but I've assumed a lot of things these days, but I'm assuming they'll have him go over because Brock is probably finishing. It feels like he's probably finishing up. I don't know. He's indicated something like that. So, like gives you some mileage out of that, and then you can keep Cody away from Roman until like SummerSlam or something. It seems like in 2 nights, all the air came out of that balloon, like not pulling the trigger on Cody, Vince coming back, like they feel completely deflated to me.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the Brock thing now. Wouldn't it have made more sense for Brock to help Cody win and then attack him on Raw? Because Brock can't go for the title as long as Roman's holding it. So
I imagine that's the reason he turned, was because he's like, you couldn't beat him. I was like, I wanted the shot, and like, you're a failure. And like, so he was like pissed off at him. That's my assumption.
That might be it. Yeah. But it's still,
which isn't a bad storyline, but there's also like, it's also Cody and Brock, with Cody having the title, is a killer first promo of a first feud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. We'll see on SmackDown this week, but it just feels like they were coming out of such a red hot weekend, and then everything just kind of nosedived. I couldn't believe. I've never seen anything quite like it.
It's incredible. So what did you think of Dynamite?
I thought the show overall was okay. There were a couple things they did that kind of grabbed my attention, like Jay White, who was predicted to be going to WWE, showed up on Dynamite. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a heck of a steal. And then there was the Wembley announcement, which kind of almost knocked me out of my chair. I'm like, what, really? Okay. I thought the MJF segment overall was pretty good. I was glad to see FTR win the tag titles and save their careers. That felt like a big deal, even though the match itself was a little sloppy. But yeah, overall, I thought it was fine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the show 2 weeks ago was like really good. It was, and last week was good. So I'm hoping this is just like a little bit of a come down, but they're still like, building these bigger storylines and leading to something. It definitely feels like they are with like, with the Bucks being out. But yeah, no, it was a good show. It was good. It wasn't bad. Like I like that they started off with the Jay White surprise, because I always like when you do big angles or something to kind of get things started off that way. So that was good. Trios match was good. Seeing Sue drive the minivan is always fun, especially in the hometown of Trent in Long Island. What else do we have? Yeah, the MJF promo was good. I always get a kick out of how he's such a baby face in Long Island. And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, he's getting cheered. I just mean like how when he's doing those interviews, he's like, you can work hard, and he's like, nothing beats hard work and nothing beats Long Island. And it's just the most white meat baby face thing because he's in Long Island. It just cracks me up. I think it's so funny.
Yeah, I like how Long Island's kind of become, I saw this comment on Twitter, and it's apropos. Long Island has kind of become AEW's Bizarro World because of MJF, where they cheer the heels and boo the faces a little bit, and that's kind of fun. It's nice to have that dynamic once in a while.
It's Bizarro World, Michael. I like, and WWE didn't do it forever, but I like when people are from somewhere, like it gives like this, it makes the locations feel different. For years, WWE would be like, oh, like, okay, let's say Jericho is in like Winnipeg or something, and he come out, he's like, and he's a heel, and then he's like, he's like, I'm glad to be living in Florida now. Like, there's never a time where they would let them like be from somewhere and like have a home field advantage. And Tony's like all about that, which I appreciate, because it's just like it gives a different dynamic. Like, okay, when you're in Chicago, like, well, maybe not now, but at a certain point in time, Punk would be a big baby face. If you like MJF in Long Island, Kenny in Winnipeg, whatever. I think that's a nice dynamic, and it gives a little bit more character and depth than just having like, oh, well, we're cheering the heels and cheering the faces and booing the heels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sammy versus Commander was really disappointing. I thought there was going to be a lot more crazy stuff. Commander, when he was in that ladder match a few weeks ago, was a lot of fun, and this wasn't that. Also, Sammy was really bad on the mic, and I was like, huh. Like I did not like the promo much.
Yeah, I don't know if they're setting up for some kind of a big four-way with the four pillars, and that's what this is going for. But it looks like right now, like, okay, MJF obviously a star. Jungle Boy got some momentum coming out of the match with Christian and everything. Darby is always over. Could use a few more big wins and more promotion, but he's typically always over. Sammy's kind of the dark horse in that one, where it's like, do you really need to be here? Really? I mean, I'm kind of fine with the other two, but you're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is like, at least it's like new and different challengers. So that's, that's good. I really like the Blackpool Combat Club segment. I love the amateur bit from Danielson. I think them as like nasty heels against the elite is pretty great. So, I will say this. Everybody was calling like, oh, Cody's a geek. He got bitched out by Brock. Yet Hangman comes out with like no friends, immediately gets the shit kicked out of him. Nobody comes to help him. And I know people are like, oh, the Young Bucks are in an ambulance. I'm like, okay, but Kenny like is there, even if they're not completely reconciled. The Dark Order is theoretically there. So I'm just like, this is like what an idiot in kayfabe.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I always see that with baby faces. It's like, why do you like? It was so funny. I'm thinking about this now. Royal Rumble '94, when Yokozuna had an entire army beat Undertaker, and I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, man, that's not fair. He's got like 10 people running out. My dad was just like, well, Paul Bearer should have had 9 baby faces lined up to help Undertaker. He should have thought of that.
He should have done it, but luckily Undertaker
like,
rose
right,
to the heavens.
It's like, where were Lex Luger and Bret Hart? They were nowhere to be seen. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, Bret's like, no, I gotta beat the fat guy. There's no way I'm gonna beat Taker.
He beat Yoko. He put him in the sharpshooter last year. It's like, okay, I know I can beat that guy.
Yeah. It was a calculated move.
Mm-hmm.
And Luger was I mean, he was still a kayfabe dirtbag. This was only a few years before he would become rich coward Lex Luger, who would kind of be Sting's friend, but also was a jerk to other people.
God.
Then we had the main events, which I thought was good, not great. There was some sloppiness. I didn't love the finish. The Guns entrance was awesome, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe you guys are going to beat him after you just gave him that entrance. I don't listen to 50 Cent, so I don't know the song, but I'm just like, it was cool.
Yeah, it was. I actually thought when I saw that entrance, I'm like, is FTR losing?
Yeah.
But no, it's like that entrance looked awesome, and it's helps elevate the Guns in a lot of people's eyes. It's little things like that make people look like stars.
Yeah. So those were the shows. That was a lot, right?
It's hard, since WrestleMania went to 2 nights, I haven't even bothered with the NXT shows. Because why? It's like I've got so much other stuff to do. I can't find time for it, but it's it's usually the biggest weekend of the year for wrestling, but we'll see what happens in August and how crazy all that's going to go down.
We will see. That it's going to be, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that they're probably having All Out a week later in Chicago. That seems like a terrible idea, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm Eric Clancy alongside Patrick Kelly, and we are
signing off.